Good afternoon everybody and welcome to the stream. I'm Robert from the El Magnifico Games channel, and today we're going to continue with our usual Wednesday poetry and riddles. Last week we finished on Fair and Fair by George Peele, so that's where we'll begin this week. George Peele was of course this individual, an English translator, poet and dramatist who is most noted for his supposed, but not universally accepted, collaboration with William Shakespeare on the play Titus Andronicus, etc. So, let's begin by rereading Fair and Fair, which I seem to remember was actually a bit of a tricky read, because I'm fairly certain, yes, it refers upwards, back up to itself in several places, which is challenging, as you'll see. Anyway, let's get on with it. Fair and twice so fair as any may be. The fairest shepherd on our green, a love for any lady. Fair and twice so fair as any may be. Thy love is fair for thee alone, and for no other lady. My love is fair, my love is gay, as fresh as been the flowers in May. And of my love, my rondelay, my merry, merry, merry rondelay, concludes with Cupid's curse. They that do change old love for new, pray God so change for worse. They that do change old love for new, pray that they change for worse. Fair and fair, and twice so fair, fair and fair, and twice so fair. Thy love is fair, for thee alone. My love can pipe, my love can sing, my love can many a pretty thing, and off his lovely praises ring, my merry, merry, merry rondelay. Amen to Cupid's curse. They that do change, may they change for worse. Sorry, I messed that up. I'm gonna redo that. Let me just double check. Am I supposed to be repeating a single line or two lines? I seem to remember us discussing this before. I think it was probably a pair of lines I was supposed to be repeating, so I messed up doubly. Well, let's give it another go, shall we? Fair and twice so fair, as fair as any may be, the fairest shepherd on our green, a love for any lady. Fair and twice so fair, as fair as any may be, thy love is fair for thee alone, and for no other lady. My love is fair, my love is gay, as fresh as been the flowers in May, and of my love, my rondelay, my merry, merry, merry rondelay, concludes with Cupid's curse. They that do change old love for new, pray God so change for worse. They that do change old love for new, pray God so change for worse. Fair and twice so fair, as fair as any may be. Fair and twice so fair, as fair as any may be. Thy love is fair for thee alone, and for no other lady. My love can pipe, my love can sing, my love can many a pretty thing, and off his lovely praises ring, my merry, merry, merry rondelays. Amen to Cupid's curse. They that do change old love for new, pray God so change for worse. They that do change old love for new, pray God so change for worse. Fair and twice so fair as any may be. There we go, got there in the end. Admittedly, it wasn't a perfect reading by any means, but still. Let's move on. So, this next poem, A Farewell to Arms, is also by George Peele. Apparently it is addressed to Queen Elizabeth. That would of course be Queen Elizabeth I, Elizabeth Tudor. So, his golden locks time hath to silver turned, O time too swift, O swiftness never ceasing. His youth 'gainst time and age have ever spurned, but spurned in vain, youth waneth by increasing. Beauty, strength, youth are flowers but fading seen, duty, faith, love are roots and evergreen. His helmet now shall make a hive for bees, and lovers' sonnets turn to holy psalms. A man at arms must now serve on his knees, and feed on prayers which are age in his alms. But though from court to cottage he depart, his saint is sure of his unspotted heart. And when he sad if sits in homely cell, he'll teach his swains this carol for a song. Blessed be the hearts that wish my sovereign well, cursed be the souls that think her any wrong. Goddess, allow this aged man his right, to be your beadsman now that was your knight. Interesting. Oh, that should have been aged man. Goddess, allow this aged man his right. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out the meter. At first I thought it was iambic pentameter, but this doesn't seem iambic to me. Goddess. Allow this aged man his right. Oh no, that works. That's just a trochaic substitution on the first foot. Yes, I think it's iambic pentameter. And we have an ABABCC rhyming scheme. Very nice. You have to admit, it is well crafted. What was I going to do? I was going to look up what a beadsman is. That seems like it may be significant. For no particular reason, I have reached for my physical dictionary before checking on Wiktionary. Bead, beading, beadledom. I don't see any beadsman though, so perhaps this is a job for Wiktionary. From earlier bedeman, that's almost certainly not how it's pronounced. In fact, it probably is beadman, thinking about it. A petitioner. Equivalent to bead, request, petition, prayer. Historical, a petitioner. Someone who seeks some type of favour from another, usually from a superior. A man employed in praying, especially one who prays for another. Historical England. A poor man supported in a bead house and required to pray for the soul of its founder, an almsman. This sounds very likely, doesn't it? Or a public almsman, one who received alms from the king and was expected in return to pray for the royal welfare and that of the state, a licensed beggar. Oh, that's specifically Scotland though, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's being referred to here. What is a bead house? An almshouse for poor people who pray daily for their benefactors. Almshouse. A building of residence for the poor, sick, or elderly of a parish. Originally founded by the church, usually a charity relying on donations for funding. Oh. Interesting. Right, so that concludes the poems from George Peele. So, let's move on to Robert Greene. Who was Robert Greene? Robert Greene, dramatist, 1558 to 1592. That certainly sounds like the right period, doesn't it? Robert Greene was an English author in his day, and now best known for a posthumous pamphlet attributed to him, Greene's Groats, Worth of Wit, bought with a million of repentance, widely believed to contain an attack on William Shakespeare. Robert Greene was a popular Elizabethan dramatist and pamphleteer known for his negative critiques of his colleagues. He is said to have been born in Norwich. He attended Cambridge, when he received a BA in 1580 and an MA in 1583 before moving to London, where he arguably became the first professional author in England. Greene was prolific and published in many genres, including romances, plays, and autobiographies. Goodness. Looks like they've got a fair amount of information about his career, but not a general biography. And that would be more interesting, because assuming this is the same Robert Greene, which it presumably is, knowing a bit about his upbringing and any significant events in his life, such as if he got married, when he got married, what was the background of his partner, that sort of thing, that might inform the poetry, but I suspect the course of his career, less so. In The Repentance, Green claimed to have married a gentleman's daughter whom he abandoned after having had a child by her and spent her dowry, after which he went to Lincolnshire and he to London. In 4 letters, Gabriel Harvey prints a letter allegedly written by Green to his wife, in which he addresses her as dull. However, extensive searches of London and Norwich records by successive biographers have failed finally to locate the record of Green's marriage. Anyway. Oh, there is a section on family. We'll read that quickly. According to the author Brenda Richardson, the chief problem in compiling a biography of Robert Greene was his name. Robert was one of the most popular given names of the era, and Greene was a common surname. That raises the possibility that this isn't the same Robert Greene, doesn't it? They do have a date for this person's life in the Oxford Book of English Verse, 1560 to 1592. Now that isn't identical, but that is so close that I think it likely is the same individual. Because obviously these were best estimates when the book was written in 1900, and since then we've been able to refine those estimates. Anyway, where was I? L. H. Newcomb suggests that Robert Greene was probably the Robert Greene, son of Robert Greene, baptised on the 11th of July 1558 at St. George's Tombland, Norwich. Greene later described himself as from Norwich on his title pages, and the year is appropriate for the Robert Greene who enrolled at St. John's College, Cambridge, as a sizar on the 26th of November 1575. What's a sizar? At Trinity College, Dublin, and the University of Cambridge, a sizar is an undergraduate who receives some form of assistance such as meals, lower fees, or lodging during his or her period of study, in some cases in return for doing a defined job. The author's father was probably one of 2 Robert Greenes found later in parish records, either a saddler who lived modestly in the parish until 1599, or a cordwainer who kept an inn in Norwich from the late 1570s until his death in 1591. The saddler appeals to biographers who attribute the writer's later low-life sympathies to a humble birth. The innkeeper, a more prosperous man, possibly related to landowners, interest scholars who note the social ambitions of Greene's early works. Oh, I see. Both the Norwich cordwainer turned innkeeper and Norwich saddler left wills, proved in 1591 and 1596 respectively, but neither will mention a son named Robert. However, Greene himself implied that he had been disinherited by his father. A cordwainer is a shoemaker who makes new shoes from new leather. Interesting. What was I going to do? I was going to check to see if there's any mention of this particular poem, Semela. Doesn't seem like it. Never mind, I assume we've got the right person. It seems extremely likely. So, Semela by Robert Greene. Like to Diana in her summer weed, girt with a crimson robe of brightest dye, goes fair Semela. Whiter than be the flocks that straggling feed, when washed by Arethusa faint they lie, in fair Semela. As fair Aurora in her morning grey, decked with the ruddy glister of her love, is fair Semela. Like lovely Thetis on a calm day, when as her brightness Neptune's fancy move, shines fair Semela. Her tresses gold, her eyes like glassy streams, her teeth are pearl, the breasts are ivory. O fair Samela, her cheeks like rose and lily yield forth gleams, her brows bright arches framed of ebony. Thus fair Samela, passive fair Venus in her bravest hue, and Juno in show of majesty, for she's Samela. Pallas in wit, all three, if you well view, for beauty, wit, and matchless dignity, yield to Samela. This, we do know Samela is an a female given name, because we saw that when we were trying to look for a reference to Samela. I don't know if it has any other connotation, so I don't know where the name comes from. A lot of Roman references to Roman gods. Interesting structurally, isn't it? I think it was 4 feet, 5 feet, 2 feet. Let's check. Like to Diana in, we're up to 6. Her summer weed, that's 5 in total, 5 feet in total, 10 syllables. Girt with a crimson robe of brightest dye. Okay, so that's also 5. So 5 and 5 goes fair Samela. And is it the same lower down? As fair Aurora in her morning grey, decked with the ruddy glister of her love, is fair Samela. Oh, what am I saying about this being... No, that is 2 feet, isn't it? Because it's got a weak ending. Is fair Samela. Because it's iambic. Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's 5, 5, 2, 5, 5, 2, 5, 5, 2 all the way through. Streams and gleams rhyme. Ivory and ebony don't. Could be an attempt at a half rhyme. Although the consonant sounds different, so that doesn't really work. Even as a half rhyme. Well, I mean, it is the same vowel sound, to be fair. Yeah, so that would be that would be a half rhyme. What else do we have? Hue and majesty. Well, majesty at most is a half rhyme. Hue doesn't rhyme with gleams or streams, nor anything else around it. Certainly not Samela. Love and move, those are I rhymes. Grey and day, those are rhymed. Feed, weed, die, lie. Okay. I think we're getting an idea of the structure. Hue and view do, majesty and dignity half. That's assonance, isn't it? So yeah, it's in 5-5-2. Each stanza is made of 4 parts, which contain 5 feet, 5 feet, 2 feet, and each pair of those rhyme in the corresponding position. So the first line of the first 3-line part and the first line of the second 3-line part rhyme, and then again with the first line of the third 3-line part and the fourth 3-line part, and so on. I don't think that's a recognised structure. That just seems to be something that the author has come up with, so far as I'm aware. As far as sentiments, I'm failing to see past it being just a general praise of a woman. It's possible that there's some connotations here that I'm missing. But then again, if there are, I'm missing them. And we've seen plenty of very complimentary poetry towards women in the past. In that respect, it doesn't seem all that remarkable. I suppose the degree to which it references Roman mythology, arguably, that could be an attempt to demonstrate higher learning, or it may not. Hard to say. Anyway, I think I've done this one to death. If you have anything else you would like to discuss about this poem, or just any of your own remarks, please leave a comment, and I will read it shortly. But in the meantime, I'll be moving on to the next one. Faunia, also by Robert Greene. Ah, were she pitiful as she is fair, or but as mild as she is seeming so, then were my hopes greater than my despair, than all the world were heaven, nothing woe. Ah, were her heart relenting as her hand, that seems to melt even with the mildest touch, then knew I where to seek me in a land, under white heavens, but yet there is not such. So as she shows she seems the budding rose, yet sweeter far than is an earthly flower, sovereign of beauty, like the spray she grows. Compassed she is with thorns and cankered flower, yet were she willing to be plucked and worn, she would be gathered, though she grew on thorn. Ah, when she sings, all music else be still, for none must be compared to her note. Ne'er breathed so glee from Philomella's bill, nor from the morning singer's swelling throat. Ah, when she riseth from her blissful bed, she comforts all the world as doth the sun, and at her sight the night's foul vapours fled. When she is set, the gladsome day is done. O glorious sun, imagine me the west, shine in my arms, and set thou in my breast. Slightly more interesting one, I think. Regarding structure, it seems to be an AB rhyming scheme. So alternating rhyming lines, although only in pairs. Look like iambic pentameter again to me. Yep. I thought the imagery was slightly better this time. What does it mean by a cankered flower? Am I missing something? Probably. A plant disease marked by gradual decay. Oh, okay. I didn't realise that. I knew of the usage for a particularly horrid ulcer, but not to the plant disease. So yeah, for example, first of all, likening her to a flower, which is in no way new within poetry. This was written over 400 years ago, and it was an old metaphor by then. But then he goes one step further with the lines, yet were she willing to be plucked and worn, she would be gathered though she grew on thorn. That's nice. That's the fact that he's taken this analogy and then made a logical deduction from it, and one which serves the poem's central theme. That was good. And similarly, she comforts all the world as she comforts all the world as doth the sun, and at her sight the night's foul vapours fled. When she is set, the gladsome day is done. So here we go. She's being set up as or rather, the sun is being set up as a metaphor for her. Then a glorious sun, imagine me the west. What does the sun do? It sets in the west. It comes to it. Shine in my arms and set thou in my breast. So again, exact same thing. He's taken a fairly obvious metaphor, but then taken it one step further, and used an extension of that metaphor to serve the poem. Again, I like it. Beyond that, I don't have much more to say, really. Again, if you have any comments, please leave them in chat and I will read them. But for now, I will move on. Cephestia's Lullaby. Now that does sound like a Roman name, doesn't it? I don't know that it is, but it sounds like one. Weep not, my wanton, smile upon my knee. When thou art old, there's grief enough for thee. Mother's wag, pretty boy, father's sorrow, father's joy. When thy father first did see such a boy by him and me, he was glad, I was woe. Fortune changed, made him so, when he left his pretty boy. Last his sorrow, first his joy. Weep not, my wanton, smile upon my knee. When thou art old, there's grief enough for thee. Streaming tears that never stint, like pearl drops from a flint, fell by course from his eyes, that one another's place supplies. Thus he grieved in every part, tears of blood fell from his heart, when he left his pretty boy, father's sorrow, father's joy. Weep not, my wanton, smile upon my knee. When thou art old, there's grief enough for thee. The wanton smiled, father wept, mother cried, baby leapt. More he crowed, more he cried. Nature could not sorrow hide. He must go, he must kiss. Child and mother, baby bliss. For he left his pretty boy, father's sorrow, father's joy. Weep not, my wanton, smile upon my knee. When thou art old, there's grief enough for thee. I must say, that seemed surprisingly modern, didn't it? Both in theme and the presentation. I think I really quite enjoyed that one. I was going to look up wanton, which I really have a distinct recollection we looked this up last week. Undisciplined, unruly, not able to be controlled. Playful, sportive, merry or carefree, lewd, immoral, sexually open, unchaste, capricious, reckless of morality, justice, etc. Extravagant, unrestrained, excessive. Yes, and I seem to remember us having a discussion about wanton as an adjective, noun, and verb. As a noun, a pampered or coddled person, an overly playful person, a trifler, a self-indulgent person fond of excess, a lewd or immoral person. Verb, to rove and ramble without restraint, rule or limit, to revel, to play loosely, to frolic. To waste or squander, especially in pleasure, most often with away. The young man wantoned away his inheritance. Yes, I seem to remember we read this last week as well. To act wantonly, to be lewd or how's that pronounced? Lascivious, I think. So in general it means unruly, unrestrained, or possibly even lewd. Let's give this one more reading, actually. Weep not, my wanton, smile upon my knee. When thou art old, there's grief enough for thee. Mother's wag, pretty boy, father's sorrow, father's joy. When thy father first did see such a boy by him and me, he was glad, I was woe. Fortune changed him so, when he left his pretty boy. Last his sorrow, first his joy. Weep not, my wanton, smile upon my knee. When thou art old, there's grief enough for thee. Streaming tears that never stint, like pearl drops from a flint, fell by course from his eyes, that one another's place supplies. Thus he grieved in every part, tears of blood fell from his heart, and when he left his pretty boy, father's sorrow, father's joy. Weep not, my wanton, smile upon my knee. When thou art old, there's grief enough for thee. The wanton smiled, father wept, mother cried, baby leapt. More he crowed, more he cried. Nature could not sorrow hide. He must go, he must kiss mother and child, baby bliss. For he left his pretty boy, father's sorrow, father's joy. Weep not, my wanton, smile upon my knee. When thou art old, there's grief enough for thee. Is that a reference to an actual person, I wonder? An actual story? No, it doesn't look like it. The only reference that's coming up on Wikipedia appears to be a reference to an anthology, I think. It consists of 5 songs composed on poems by William Blake, Robert Burns, Robert Greene, Thomas Randolph and John Philip. Okay, so it's not an anthology, it's some music that's been set to poetry. Anyway, there was another poem not too dissimilar to this in meaning, wasn't there? Well, let's talk about the meaning briefly. So far as I can tell, it seems to be about a father leaving a relationship with a child. I could be wrong, I must admit. My understanding isn't perfect. But that's what it looks like to me. See, it sounds to me like it's a father leaving a relationship and being happy to leave, but at the same time sorrowful to be leaving his son behind. But to be fair, it could be that the father is leaving for some other reason, not the relationship. Like, for example, if he had to work a long way away. But if that were the case, why would he be so happy about it? That's what makes me think that this is more about a relationship breaking down, but a child being left behind. Which, like I say, seems like... well, it seems like a very modern sentiment, but clearly it isn't. Anyway, if I quickly go back up, perhaps we can find the poem I remember from before, although I do think it was a while ago. Yes, this may take a while. I think this was the one, a cradle song. Come little babe, come silly soul, thy father's shame, thy mother's grief, born as I doubt to all our dole, and to myself unhappy chief, sing lullaby and lap it warm, for soul that thinks no creature harm. Thou little thinkest and less dost know the cause of this thy mother's moan. Thou wantest the whip to wail her woe, and I myself am all alone. Why dost thou weep, why dost thou wail? Knowest not yet what thou dost ail, etc. But come to mother, babe, and play, for father false is fled away. Yes, by Nicholas Breton. So that's an interesting... Oh, this was from 1593 to 4. Well, published in that year. Probably as part of an anthology. But my point is, it's from a similar time. Both would have been published during Queen Elizabeth I's reign. Interesting. Very interesting. So it suggests it wasn't that uncommon for couples to break up at that point. I can't imagine they would have got their marriages dissolved, though. Then again, who said they were married? Anyway, let's move on. We're moving on to poetry by Alexander Hume. Oops. Looked him up in Wiktionary, not Wikipedia. There we go. Alexander Hume was a Scottish poet who served as moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland in the early 17th century. He was born in 1558, the son of Patrick Hume. The brother of Patrick Hume of Polwarth, he was educated at the University of St Andrews, graduating in 1574, then studied civil law in Paris. He returned to Scotland in 1578, serving in the Court of Justice, but ironically found it too corrupt for his tastes and decided instead to devote himself to the service of the church, and became minister of Logie Kirk in Stirlingshire in 1597. This appears to have been at least partly supported by Alexander Home of North Berwick, Provost of Edinburgh. His stipend, or at least a bulk of it, appears to have been paid by his own father rather than by the church. His manse stood to the west of the church in the grounds of Arthurey Castle and dated from 1590. A manse is a clergy house inhabited by or formerly inhabited by a minister, usually in the context of Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist and other Christian traditions. He served as moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland several times, thought to be 1602, 1604 and 1607, possibly also 1599. On the 6th of May 1608 he was attacked by a parishioner, possibly his brother-in-law, James Duncanson, with a heavy staff and never recovered. Oh dear. Duncanson is probably the same James Duncanson mentioned in parish records of April 1595 for having carnal deal together with Agnes Forrester of Stirling, where the church forced them to marry. Hume grew ill in May 1609 and died on the 4th of December of that year. In his will he left a considerable number of books plus several musical instruments to his best friend John Scerar, a Bailey in Stirling, he left a gold ring to remember his special love. He left his love and Christian affection to Dame Mary Stuart, Countess of Mar. The poet Lady Elizabeth Melville, Lady Comrie, John Gillespie, Minister of Alva, Ninian Drummond, Minister of Dunblane, William Stirling, Minister of Port Menteith, John Allison, Minister of Kincardine. By the way, I'm almost certainly mispronouncing all of these. William Nunn, Minister of Kippen, and James Caldwell, Minister of Bothkennar. His position at Logie Kirk was filled by Reverend James Saytone, or Saytown of Denny, before the end of the year. He published in 1589 hymns or sacred songs, including the beautiful The Day Estival, descriptive of a summer day. Oh, I wonder if that's what's in the anthology here entitled A Summer Day. Other works included Thanks for the Deliverance of the Sick and an epistle to Master Gilbert Monteith. His sister Janet Hume married Lord David Hume of Law. He was married to Marion Duncanson, daughter of John Duncanson, principal of St Leonard's College in St Andrews, and later Dean of the Chapel Royal in Stirling. They had two daughters, Dinah and Naomi, and one son, Caleb Hume, and they lived together in Logie Manse. The family were asked to leave the manse in June 1610 to accommodate the new minister, but were compensated £60. His great-nephew was Patrick Hume, first Earl of Marshmont. Anyway, so that's who he was. So, Alexander Hume, A Summer Day. O perfect light, which shied away the darkness from the light, and set a ruler o'er the day, another o'er the night. Thy glory, when the day forth flies, more vively doth appear, than at midday unto our eyes the shining sun is clear. The shadow of the earth anon removes and draweth by, while in the east, when it is gone, appears a clearer sky, when soon perceive the little larks, the lapwing and the snipe, they tune their songs like nature's clerks o'er meadows mere and stripe. Our hemisphere is polished clean, and lighted more and more, while everything's clearly seen, which seemed it dim before, except the glistering astras bright, which all the night were clear, of skit with a greater light no longer do appear. The golden globe incontinent sets up his shining head, and o'er the earth and firmament displays his beams of bread. For joy the birds with bolden throats against his visage sheen take up their kindly music notes in woods and gardens green. The dew upon the tender crops, like pearls white and round, or like to melted silver drops, refreshes all the ground. The misty reek, the clouds of rain, from tops of mountains scales, clear of the highest hills and plain, the vapours take the veils. The ample heaven of fabric sure, in cleanest does surpass the crystal and the silver pure, or clearest polished glass. The time so tranquil isn't still, that nowhere shall ye find, save on a high and barren hill, an air of peeping wind. All trees and simples great and small, that balmy leaf do bear, than they were painted on a wall, no more they move or stare. Calm is the deep and purple sea, ye, smoother than the sand. The waves that watering wont to be, are stable like the land. So silent is the Cecil air, that every crying call, the hills and dales of forest fair, again repeats them all. The flourishes and fragrant flowers, though Phobos' fostering heat, refreshed with dew and silver showers, cast up an odour sweet. The clogged busy humming bees that never think to drone on flowers and flourishes of trees collect their liquor brown. The sun, most like a speedy post, with ardent course ascends, the beauty of heavenly host up to our zenith tends. The burning beams down from his face so fervently can beat, the man and beast now seek a place to save them from the heat. The herds beneath some leafy tree, amidst the flowers they lie, the staple ships upon the sea tend up their sails to dry. With gilded eyes and open wings, the cock his courage shows, the claps of joy his breast he dings, the 20 times he crows. The dove with whistling wings so blue, the winds can fast collect, her purple pens turn many a hue against the sun direct. Now noon is went, gone is midday, the heat doth slake at last, the sun descends down west away, for 3 o'clock is past. The rays of the sun we see diminish in their strength, the shade of every tower and tree extended is in length. Great is the calm, for everywhere the wind is settling down, the reek throws right up in the air from every tower and town. The gloaming comes, the sun is spent, the sun goes out of sight, and painted is the Occident with purple sanguine light. Our west horizon circular, from the time the sun be set, is all with rubies as it were, or roses red o' fret. What pleasure were to walk and see, and long a river clear, the perfect form of every tree within the deep appear. O then it were a seemly thing, while all is still and calm, the praise of God to play and sing, with cornet and with charm. All labourers draw home at even, and can to others say, thanks to the gracious God of heaven, which sent this summer day. That was a nice one. I notice it appears to be a ballad. The meaning seems fairly clear. It's just generally very praising of the nice qualities of a good summer's day. But well expressed, well structured. So, let's move on. Though as always, if you have any comments of your own, please leave them in chat and I will read them. So, we move on to Bridal Song by George Chapman. So, who was George Chapman? George Chapman, 1559 to the 12th of May 1634, was an English dramatist, translator and poet. Interesting how often those three seem to come together. I swear we've read on at least half a dozen occasions that someone was a dramatist, translator and poet. I wonder if they're translating from something in particular, like if they're translating older poetry in, say, French. Anyway, he was a classical scholar whose work shows the influence of Stoicism. Chapman has been speculated to be the rival poet of Shakespeare's sonnets by William Minto, as well as an anticipator of the metaphysical poets of the 17th century. Chapman is best remembered for his translations of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Oh, of course, from the Greek. That makes sense. And the Homeric Batrachomyomachia. Who were the metaphysical poets then? The term metaphysical poets was coined by the critic Samuel Johnson to describe a loose group of 17th century English poets whose work was characterised by the inventive use of conceits and by a greater emphasis on the spoken rather than the lyrical quality of their verse. Okie doke. Anyway, so that's who George Chapman was, and I suppose we should take it that there will be as they put it, a greater focus on the use of, hold on, let me double check that. A greater emphasis on the spoken rather than lyrical quality of their verse. What do they mean by that? Do they mean it was supposed to be performed closer to spoken word? I don't know. Anyway, let's get into it. Bridal song. O come, soft rest of cares, come night. Come naked virtues only tire. The reaped harvest of the light, bound up in sheaves of sacred fire. Love calls to war, sighs his alarms, lips his swords are, the field his arms. Come night, and lay thy velvet hand on glorious days outfacing face, and all thy crowded flames command for torches to our nuptial grace. Love calls to war, sighs his alarms, lips his swords are, the field his arms. Oh, that was it. Short one. We can see here another pattern that we've seen, whereby the actual where the poem itself is well structured, but it isn't following an existing well-known structure, so far as I can tell. The author invents one, but they then repeat it, and that's what makes it structured, as opposed to just meandering, doing whatever they like. The fact that it's repeated, it becomes clear that, okay, this is deliberate, there is actually a structure to it, even if it's not a well recognised one. Looks to be iambic, I believe. And what else do we have? Seems like every second line, seems like every other line, that is every second line, rhymes with the next, in pairs. So fire, tire, alarms, arms, face, grace, and so on. As for the meaning, well, I can see the metaphor regarding, or rather the personification of love. So there's obviously this conceit of the nuptial evening as being like love going to war. That seems fairly clear. But to be honest, not all of this is clear to me. The reaped harvest of the light, bound up in sheaves of sacred fire. I don't follow that. Come night and lay thy velvet hand on glorious days outfacing face. That's a nice way of expressing it's becoming night time. And all thy crowned flames command for torches to our nuptial grace. Why would night have crowned flames? So to be honest, some of this poetry, of this particular poem, is clearly beyond me. Some of the things being referenced, I don't get the references. When it says crowned flames, does it mean flames that have been crowned? Or does it mean flames that have the quality of being a crown? I ask that because I wonder if it's actually referring to the sunset and the flames are crowning the earth. That would make sense if traditionally sunset itself was a significant point during the day of a marriage. But I don't know if it was. So I'm just speculating. Come, naked virtues only tire. What do they mean by tire here? To become sleepy or weary. To make sleepy or weary. To become bored or impatient with. To bore. Accoutrements, accessories, dress, clothes, attire. Ah, yes, because they emphasise that virtue is naked. That seems very likely. Naked virtues only tire. The reaped harvest of the light, bound up in sheaves of sacred fire. I can't help but wonder if there is some connection between fire and marriage which I'm not getting, or that there was. Unless, of course, this is again a reference to sunset in some sense that I'm missing. Anyway, there's no use my speculating like this all day. The fact of the matter is there's elements of this that I don't understand. If you have any ideas, please leave a comment. Moving on to a poem by Robert Southwell. So, who was Robert Southwell? It wouldn't be the lawyer. Could be the Jesuit and Catholic martyr. Seems like that probably was the author. Robert Southwell, also Saint Robert Southwell, was an English Roman Catholic priest of the Jesuit order. He was also a poet, hymnodist and clandestine missionary in Elizabethan England. After being arrested and imprisoned in 1592 and intermittently tortured and questioned by Richard Topcliffe, Southwell was eventually tried and convicted of high treason for his links to the Holy See. The Holy See, also called See of Rome, Petrine See or Apostolic See, is the jurisdiction of the Pope in his role as the Bishop of Rome. It includes the Apostolic Episcopal See of the Diocese of Rome, which is ecclesiastical jurisdiction over the Catholic Church and the etc. On the 21st of February 1595, Father Southwell was hanged at Tyburn. In 1970, he was canonised by Pope Paul VI as one of the 40 martyrs of England and Wales. That's interesting. The 40 martyrs of England and Wales, or Cuthbert, Maine, and 39 companion martyrs, are a group of Catholic lay and religious men and women executed between 1535 and 1679 for treason and related offences under various laws enacted by Parliament during, etc. He was born at Horsham St Faith, Norfolk, England. Southwell, the youngest of 8 children, was brought up in a family of the Norfolk gentry. Despite their Catholic sympathies, the Southwells had profited considerably from King Henry VIII's suppression of the monasteries. Robert was third son of Richard Southwell of Horsham St Faith's, Norfolk, by his first wife Bridget, daughter of Sir Roger Copley of Roughway, Sussex. The hymnodist's maternal grandmother was Elizabeth, daughter of Sir William Shelley. Sir Richard Southwell was his paternal grandfather, but his father was born out of wedlock. We probably don't want to read all of this. In 1576 he was sent to the English college at Douai, which I'm probably mispronouncing, boarding there but studying at the Jesuit College of Anchin, a French college associated, like the English college, with the University of Douai. He studied briefly under Leonard Lessius. At the end of the summer, however, his education was interrupted by the movement of French and Spanish forces. For greater safety, Southwell was sent to Paris and studied at the Collège de Clermont under the tutelage of the Jesuit Thomas Derbyshire. He returned to Douai on the 15th of June 1577. A year later he set off on foot to Rome with the intention of joining the Society of Jesus. A 2-year novitiate of Tournai was required before joining the society, however, and initially he was denied entry. He appealed the decision by sending a heartfelt, emotional letter to the school. He bemoans the situation, writing, "How can I but waste in anguish and agony to find himself disjoined from that company, severed from that society, disunited from that body, wherein life, all my life, my love, lieth all my life, my love, my whole heart and affection." Archivum Romanum Societas Jesus, Anglia, 14th, Fol 80, folder possibly, under date 1578. His efforts succeeded as he was admitted to the probation house of St. Andrea on the 17th of October 1578, and in 1580 became a member of the Society of Jesus. Immediately after the completion of the novitiate, Southwell began studies in philosophy and theology at the Jesuit College in Rome. During this time he worked as a secretary to the rector, and writings of his are to be found among the school's documents. Upon completion of his studies, Southwell was granted his BA in 1584, which was also the year of his ordination. He was appointed repetitor, tutor in the Venerable English College at Rome, and for 2 years became the prefect of studies there. It was in 1584 that an act was passed forbidding any English-born subject of Queen Elizabeth, who had entered into the priest order in the Catholic Church since her ascension, to remain in England longer than 40 days on pain of death. Oh dear. In 1586, Southwell, at his own request, was sent to England as a Jesuit missionary with Henry Garnet. He went from one Catholic family to another. The Jesuit William Weston had previously made his way to England. He was arrested and sent to Wisbeck Castle in 1587. The Garnet-Southwell Jesuit English mission is considered the third. The first such mission was that of Robert Parsons and Edmund Campion of 1580 to 1581. A spy reported to Sir Francis Walsingham, the Jesuits landing on the east coast in July, that they arrived without molestation at the house at Hackney of William Vaux, 3rd Baron Vaux of Harrowden. In 1588, Southwell and Garnet were joined by John Gerard and Edward Aldcorn. Southwell was from the outset closely watched. He mixed furtively in Protestant society under the assumed name of Cotton. He studied the terms of sport and used them in conversation. For the most part residing in London, he made occasional excursions to Sussex and the north. In 1589, Southwell became domestic chaplain to Anne Howard, whose husband, the first Earl of Arundel, was in prison convicted of treason. Arundel had been confined to the Tower of London since 1585, but his execution was postponed, and he remained in prison till his death in 1595. Southwell took up his residence with the Countess at Arundel House in the Strand, London. During 1591 he occupied most of his time in writing. Although Southwell's name was not publicly associated with any of his works, his literary activity was suspected by the government. Anyway, so that's who he was. And so we have times go by turns. The lopped tree in time may grow again. Those naked plants renew both fruit and flower. The sorest wight may find release of pain. The drier soil suck in some moistening shower. Times go by turns, and chances change by course, from foul to fair, from better hap to worse. The sea of fortune doth not ever flow. She draweth her favours to the lowest ebb. Her time hath equal times to come and go. A loom doth weave the fine and coarsest web. No joy so great but runneth to an end. No hap so hard but may in fine amend. Not always fall of leaf nor ever spring. No endless night, yet not eternal day. The saddest birds a season find to sing. The roughest storm a calm may soon allay. Thus with succeeding turns God tempereth all. The man may hope to rise, yet fear to fall. A chance may win that by mischance was lost. The net that holds no great takes little fish. In some things all, in all things none are crossed. Few all they need, but none have all they wish. Unmeddled joys here to no man befall. Who least have some, who most have never all. Interesting. We have an ABABCC rhyming scheme, and it appears to be an iambic pentameter if I'm not mistaken. One can't help but wonder if the title, the meaning of the poem, which is epitomised in its title, Times Go by Turns, may well have had some religious motivation, shall we say. Still, it's a nice poem and well crafted. So we move on to another poem by Robert Southwell, The Burning Babe. As I in hoary winter's night stood shivering in the snow, surprised I was with sudden heat, which made my heart to glow. And lifting up a fearful eye to view what fire was near, a pretty babe all burning bright did in the air appear, who scorched with excessive heat such floods of tears did shed, as though his floods should quench his flames which with his tears were bred. Alas, quoth he, but newly born, in fiery heats I fry, yet none approach to warm their hearts, or feel my fire but I. My faultless breast the furnace is, the fuel wounding thorns. Love is the fire, and sighs the smoke, the ashes shames and scorns. The fuel justice layeth on, and mercy blows the coals. The metal in this furnace wrought are men's defiled souls, for which as now on fire I am, to work them to their good, so will I melt into a bath, to wash them in my blood. With this he vanished out of sight, and swiftly shrunk away, and straight I called unto mind, that it was Christmas Day. Clearly very religiously motivated, but an intriguing poem. Clearly it's written as a ballad, which is interesting. I certainly picked up on references such as to wounding thorns fueling the fire. Thorns traditionally, I believe, being a symbol of sin. And of course the baby is free of sin as it's only just come into the world. Exactly what the symbolism of that is, though, one can't help but wonder. Is it trying to suggest that the innocence of a baby can even help cleanse the sins of those that have lived an improper life, or am I reading too much into it? I did notice, although it's a ballad, this particular pair of lines didn't seem to fit. As though his floods should quench his flames. Oh, perhaps that wasn't the one. Or perhaps I was just mistaken. No, that fits. I think I was just mistaken. Never mind. Noting the capital H's, which apparently I missed when I was reading it. That of course refers to God. So it's quite clear that this is supposed to be the baby Jesus. I mean, as if the reference to it being Christmas Day afterwards wasn't enough of a hint, and ignoring all the other religious references. Yes, so I think it is fairly clear that a dominant theme in this poem is the idea of cleansing people of their sins. It is an interesting poem, you have to admit. Anyway, on to the next. Henry Constable. Who was Henry Constable? Henry Constable was an English poet known particularly for Diana, one of the first English sonnet sequences. In 1591 he converted to Catholicism and lived in exile on the continent for some years. He returned to England at the accession of King James, but was soon a prisoner in the Tower and in the Fleet. He died an exile at Liège in 1613. Not ideal. Well, one thing I know is it says here a second edition that would presumably be of Diana, a sequence of 23 sonnets by Constable. A second edition containing 5 new sonnets by Constable with additions by Sir Philip Sidney and other poets followed in 1594, and this is a poem called On the Death of Sir Philip Sidney. So presumably this was a friend of his? Anyway, let's get on with it. Oh, sorry, was this not open? This was the bit I was reading. Anyway. So, on the death of Sir Philip Sidney. Give pardon, blessed soul, to my bold cries. If they importune interrupt thy song, which now with joyful notes thou singest among the angel choristers of the heavenly skies, give pardon eke, sweet soul, to my slow eyes, that since I saw thee now it is so long, and yet the tears that unto thee belong, to thee as yet they did not sacrifice. I did not know that thou wert dead before, I did not feel the grief I did sustain. The greater stroke astonisheth the more, astonishment takes from us senses of pain. I stood amazed when others' tears begun, and now begin to weep when they have done. I think that is written in a Spencerian... Oh, is it called a Spencerian sonnet? I think so. I'll have to double check. I may be mixing my terms here, but I noticed that there's an 8-line octet at the start, in which we have an ABBA rhyming scheme, and then we have a sestet at the end, which appears to be ABAB CC. Oh, apparently the last line, I noticed that most of it was in iambic pentameter. It looks like the final line may be in iambic hexameter. And now begin to weep when they have done. No, it isn't. But I don't think that invalidates it as a possible Spencerian sonnet. In a Spencerian sonnet, the last line of every quatrain is linked with the first one of the next one, yielding the scheme A, B, A, B. Oh yeah, how did I miss that? B, C, B, C, C, D, C. Hold on. A, B, A, B. B, C, B, C. C, D, C, D, E, E. Yes, that is what's going on, isn't it? Although it's just... hold on. So this is the first line of the sestet. So we would anticipate that it would rhyme with the previous line, sacrificed before, which don't. Maybe it's a different type of sonnet then. Oh goodness. I had this closed again, so sorry. I was going through this part. You might think I'd have the different forms memorized by now, mightn't you? Prosodically, Surrey is more adept at composing iambic pentameter. iambic pentameter, and the sonnets are written in what has come to be known anachronistically as Shakespearean measure. This version of the sonnet form, characterized by 3 alternately rhymed quatrains terminating in a final couplet AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG, became the favourite during Elizabethan times when it was widely used. It was particularly so in whole series of amatory sequences beginning with Sir Philip Sidney's On the Death of Sir Philip Sidney, Sir Philip Sidney's Astrophel and Stella, and continuing over a period of 2 decades. About 4,000 sonnets were composed during this time. I think that is what we see. Sky's eyes. No, it's not what we see, because we see A, B, B, A. A, B, B, A. Sacrifice eyes. That doesn't work. Is that a half rhyme? No, it's not. It doesn't rhyme at all, does it? Sacrifice. Just doesn't rhyme with anything else, does it? It's like it's trying to be some sort of intermediate between a Spenserian sonnet and a Shakespearean sonnet, and then it ends up with this one line that's on its own. That's what it seems like. No, not even that. That's complete rubbish, isn't it? Because you don't see the A-B-B-A structure anywhere in either of Shakespearean sonnets or Spenserian sonnets, so ignore that. What's the other one? It's a Petrarchan sonnet, isn't it? What would we expect from that? C, D, D, C. Sorry, A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A. A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A. Oh, that works. Among, belong. Yep, that works so far. And then in the sestet we get things like C, D, E, C, D, E. No. Or C, D, C, D, C, D. C, D, C, D, no. However, in Italian sonnets in English, this rule is not always observed, and C, D, D, C, E and C, D, C, D, E are also used. That's what we've got. We've got... Well, it says A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A, but if you interpret that as A, B, B, A... No, that does work. Sorry. So, just to be clear, this is a Petrarchan sonnet. It's A, B, B, A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, E, E in terms of rhyming structure. That took me a lot longer than it should have done, and I apologise. But that is its structure. So I'll give it one more reading, and then we'll move on to the next. Give pardon, blessed soul, to my bold cries, if they, importune, interrupt thy song, which now with joyful notes thou singest among the angel choristers of the heavenly skies. Give pardon, eke, sweet soul, to my slow eyes, that since I saw thee now it is so long, and yet the tears that unto thee belong, to thee as yet they did not sacrifice. I did not know that thou wert dead before, I did not feel the grief I did sustain. The greatest stroke astonisheth the more, astonishment takes from us sense of pain. I stood amazed when others' tears begun, and now begin to weep when they have done. It's an interesting little sonnet, isn't it? It makes you wonder if what he's describing is finding out about someone's death later than others have, or if it's the emotional impact of the death that was delayed. Anyway, next we move on to Love is a Sickness by Samuel Daniel. So, who was Samuel Daniel? Samuel Daniel was an English poet, playwright and historian in the late Elizabethan and early Jacobean eras. He was an innovator in a wide range of literary genres. His best-known works are the sonnet, cycle Delilah, the epic poem, The Civil Wars between the houses of Lancaster and York, the dialogue in verse, Musophilus, and the essay on English poetry, A Defence of Rhyme. He was considered one of the preeminent authors of his time, and his works had a significant influence on contemporary writers, including William Shakespeare. Daniel's writing continues to influence authors for centuries after his death, especially the Romantic poets Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth. C.S. Lewis called Daniel the most interesting man of letters whom the 16th century produced in England. Just having a quick look to see how much of his work is present. Seems like quite a lot. Okay, that being the case, we will take some time to read about his life. Although I am a bit intimidated about how much of it they have here. I certainly won't be reading all of this. Early life, education, and relationship with John Florio. Little is known about Samuel Daniel's early life. Biographer Thomas Fuller, in Histories of the Worthies of England, 1662, states that he was born not far from Taunton in Somerset. The earliest evidence providing definitive details of his life is an entry in the signature book of Oxford University documenting his matriculation at Magdalen Hall, now Hertford College, on the 17th of November 1581, aged 19. Daniel did not complete his degree at Oxford. Anthony Awood, in Athenae Oxiones, states that he was more prone to easier and smoother studies than in pecking and hewing at logic. While at Oxford, Daniel met the author and translator John Florio, who was an Italian tutor at the university at the time. In 1582, Daniel contributed a Latin verse to Florio's Giardino de Recreation. Daniel maintained a relationship with Florio for years thereafter. He wrote a decatory poem that was included in Florio's translation of Michel de Montaigne's essays in 1603. The second edition of Florio's Montaigne, published in 1619, included a revised version of Daniel's dedication, in which the poet referred to Florio as my dear friend and brother. This has led to the inference that either Florio had married Daniel's sister, or Daniel had married Florio's sister, an inference that has never been proven. Daniel's first published work was the worthy tract of Paulus Jovius, a translation of an Italian treatise on impressa or emblems by historian Paolo Giovio. Giovio? I'm not sure. This emblem book was published in 1585 by Samuel Watterson, who would remain Daniel's friend and principal publisher for the rest of his life. The worthy tract of Paulus Jovius was dedicated to Sir Edward Dymock, the Queen's champion. Daniel's association with Dymock was the first of a series of close relationships with noble patrons that came to characterise the author's literary career. Dymock wrote a letter of introduction on Daniel's behalf which allowed the young man student to live in the English embassy in France between 1585 and 1586 as he advanced his studies. Between 1590 and 1591 he returned to the continent, travelling part of the time accompanied by Dymock. Daniel and Dymock met the poet Giovanni Battista Giarini in Italy and defended English as a language worthy of poetry and great writers. This is interesting, but I think I will get into the poetry now. So, first poem by Samuel Daniel we have here is Love is a Sickness. Love is a sickness full of woes, and remedies refusing. A plant that with most cutting grows, most barren with best using. Why so? More we enjoy it, more it dies. If not enjoyed, it sigh and cries, hey ho! Love is a torment of the mind, a tempest everlasting. And Jove hath made it of a kind, not well, nor full, nor fasting. Why so? More we enjoy it, more it dies. If not enjoyed, it sigh and cries, hey ho! Perhaps I'm not knowledgeable enough to fully appreciate that one, but I wasn't overstruck by it. It has an odd structure. First I thought it was going to be a ballad, but then it didn't turn into one. It does keep to its own structure though, to be fair. As we were saying earlier about that being a repeating pattern, for a particular poem, an author coming up with a structure and then sticking to it. Again, another reference to hey ho, which I just feel like it means something more significant than the expression would mean today. Anyway, that's about all I can say about this particular poem. If you have anything to add, please leave a comment in chat and I will look at it. Ulysses and the Siren. Now, Ulysses was another name for... It was the Roman name for Odysseus, I believe. And I believe it was Odysseus who, in the Odyssey, had himself tied to a ship. Well, he was on a ship. His crew were passing the sirens, who it was known may well try to enchant the crew by singing to cause them to... I'm not sure if it was stop at the island or crash at the island, but either way, end up on the island and then be killed. I believe that was more or less the idea. And Odysseus not only ordered his crew to plug up their ears so that they couldn't be enchanted in that way, but he had them tie him to a mast of the ship, or to the mast, with his ears not plugged, and ordered his crew not to let him down even if he begged them to do so that he could hear the beautiful singing without risking his life. That's the story anyway. So, Ulysses and the Siren. Come, worthy Greek, Ulysses, come, possess these shores with me. The winds and seas are troublesome, and here we may be free. Here may we sit and view their toil that travail in the deep, enjoy the day in mirth the while, and spend the night in sleep. Fair nymph, if fame or honour were to be attained with ease, then would I come and rest me there, and leave such toils as these? But here it dwells, and here must I with danger seek it forth, to spend the time luxuriously, become not men of worth. Ulysses, oh be not deceived with that unreal name. The honour is a thing conceived, and rests on others' fames, begotten only to molest, appease and to beguile. The best thing of our life, our rest, and give us up to toil. Delicious nymph, suppose there were no honour nor report, yet manliness would scorn to wear the time in idle sport, for toil doth give a better touch, to make us feel our joy, and ease finds tediousness as such, as labour yields annoy. Then pleasure likewise seems a shore, whereto tends all your toil, which you forego to make it more, and perish oft the while. Who may disport them diversely, find never tedious day, and ease may have variety, as well as action may. But natures of the noblest frame, those toils and dangers please, and they make comfort in the same, as much as you in ease. And with the thought of actions past, recreated still, when pleasure leaves a touch at last, to show that it was ill. That doth opinion only cause, that's out of custom bred, which makes us many other laws than ever nature did. No widow's wail for our delights, our sports are without blood. The world we see by warlike wights receives more hurt than good. But yet the state of things require these motions of unrest, and these great spirits of high desire seem born to turn them best, to purge the mischiefs that increase, and all good order mar. For oft we see a wicked peace to be well changed for war. Well, Ulysses, then I see I shall not have thee here, and therefore I will come to thee, and take my fortune there. I must be one that cannot win, yet lost were I not won. For beauty hath created been, to undo or be undone. That was an interesting one, wasn't it? Seems to be a ballad. I mean, at face value, you just have a conversation between Ulysses and the siren, which is interesting, especially since she's obviously, at least initially, trying to persuade him to visit her on the island, as you'd expect. But within that conversation, there seems some deeper philosophical ideas which are interesting, such as the potential use of war, or a justification for it. Not sure you'd get much taste for that now, but it's interesting. I think I'll give that one more read. I don't think I did a particularly good job of reading it the first time, and then we'll move on to the next poem. If you have any comments, please leave them in chat and I will look at them. So, Ulysses and the Siren. Come, worthy Greek, Ulysses, come, possess these shores with me. The winds and seas are troublesome, and here we may be free. Here may we sit and view their toil that travail in the deep, enjoy the day in mirth the while, and spend the night in sleep. Fair nymph, if fame or honour were to be attained with ease, then would I come and rest me there, and leave such toils as these? But here it dwells, and here must I, with danger seek it forth, to spend the time luxuriously, becomes not men of worth. Ulysses, oh be not deceived with that unreal name. This honour is a thing conceived, and rests on others' fame. Begotten only to molest, our peace and to beguile, the best thing of our life, our rest, and give us up to toil. Delicious nymph, suppose there were no honour nor report, yet manliness would scorn to wear the time in idle sport, for toil doth give a better touch, to make us feel our joy, and ease finds tediousness as much as labour yields annoy. Then pleasure likewise seems the shore, whereto tends all your toil, which you forego to make it more, and perish oft the while. Who may disport them diversely, find never tedious day, and ease may have variety, as well as action may. But nature's of the noblest frame, these toils and dangers please, and they take comfort in the same, as much as you in ease, and with the thought of actions past, are recreated still, when pleasure leaves a touch at last, to show that it was ill. That doth opinion only cause, that's out of custom bred, which makes as many other laws, that ever nature did. No widows wail for our delights, our sports are without blood, the world we see by warlike whites, receives more hurt than good. But yet the state of things require these motions of unrest, and these great spirits of high desire seem born to turn them best, to purge the mischiefs that increase, and all good order mar, for oft we see a wicked peace to be well changed for war. Well, well, Ulysses, then I see I shall not have thee here, and therefore I will come to thee, and take my fortune there. I must be one that cannot win, yet lost were I not one, for beauty hath created been, to undo or be undone. So, we move on to Beauty, Time and Love, which seems to have a subtitle, Sonnets. So I assume it's a series of sonnets? It would appear so. The obvious candidates being a Petrarchan sonnet, a Shakespearean sonnet, or a Spenserian sonnet. So we'll have to see. Beauty, Time and Love. Fair is my love, and cruel as she's fair, her brow shades frown, although her eyes are sunny. Her smiles are lightning, though her pride despair, and her disdains are gall, her favours honey. A modest maid, decked with a blush of honour, whose feet do tread green paths of youth and love, the wonder of all eyes that look upon her, sacred on earth, designed a saint above. Chastity and beauty, which were deadly foes, live reconciled friends within her brow. And had she pity to conjoin with those, then who had heard the plaints I utter now? For had she not been fair, and thus unkind, my muse had slept, and none had known my mind. My spotless love hovers with purest wings about the temple of the proudest frame, where blaze those lights fairest of earthly things, which clear our clouded world with brightest flame. My ambitious thoughts, confined in her face, affect no honour but what she can give. My hopes do rest in limits of her grace. I weigh no comfort unless she relieve. For she that can my heart in paradise hold in her fairest hand what dearest is, my fortune's wheel the circle of her eyes, whose rolling grace design once a turn of bliss. All my life's sweet consists in her alone, so much I love the most unloving one. And yet I cannot reprehend the flight, or blame the attempt as presuming to soar. The mounting venture for a high delight did make the honour of the fall the more. For those who get wealth, for who gets wealth and puts not from the shore, danger hath honour, great designs their fame, glory doth follow, courage goes before, and though the event answers not the same, suffice that high attempts have never shame. The mean observer, whom base safety keeps, lives without honour, dies without a name, and in eternal darkness ever sleeps. And therefore, Delilah, 'tis to me no blot to have attempted, though attained thee not. When men shall find thy flower, thy glory pass, and thou with careful brow, sitting alone, have this message from thy glass, that tells the truth and says that all is gone, fresh shalt thou see in me the wounds thou madest. Thou spent thy flame, in me the heat remaining. I that have loved thee thus before thou fadest, my faith shall wax when thou art in thy waning. The world shall find this miracle in me, that fire can burn when all the matter's spent. Then what my faith has been myself shalt see, and that thou wast unkind thou mayest repent. Thou mayest repent that thou hast scorned my tears, when winter snows upon thy sable hairs. Beauty, sweet love, is like the morning dew, whose short refresh upon the tender green cheers for a time, but till the sun doth show, and straight is gone as it had never been. Soon doth it fade that makes the fairest flourish. Short is the glory of the blushing rose, the hue which thou so carefully dost nourish, yet which at length thou must be forced to lose, when thou, surcharged with burthen of thy years, shalt bend thy wrinkles homeward to the earth, and that in beauty's least expired appears the date of age, the calends of our death. But no more, this must not be foretold, for women grieve to think they must be old. I must not grieve my love, whose eyes would read lines of delight whereupon her youth might smile. Flowers have time before they come to seed, and she is young, and now must sport the while. And sport, sweet maid, in season of years, and learn to gather flowers before they wither, and where the sweetest bosom first appears, yet love and youth conduct thy pleasures thither. Lighten forth smells to clear the clouded air, and calm the tempests which my sighs do raise. Pity and smells do best become the fair, pity and smells must only yield thee praise. Make me to say, when all my griefs are gone, happy the heart that sighed for such a one. Let others sing of knights and paladins, in aged accents and untimely words, paint shadows in imaginary lines, which well the reach of their high wit records. But I must sing of thee, and those fair eyes. Authentic shall my verse in time to come, when yet the unborn shall say, lo, where she lies, whose beauty made him speak what else was dumb. These are the arks, the trophies I erect, to fortify thy name against old age, and these thy sacred virtues must protect against the dark and time's consuming rage. Though the error of my youth in them appear, suffice they show I lived and loved thee dear. Goodness. Quite a lot to unpack there, I think. I think that was a Shakespearean sonnet, if I remember correctly. What's the pattern of a Shakespearean sonnet? Just look it up. It'd be under here, wouldn't it? A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Yep, that's what we see. So it was indeed a Shakespearean sonnet. I think I'm just going to have to go through it again slowly, thinking about its meaning. There was a lot there. So, this time more slowly. Fair is my love, and cruel as she's fair. Her brow shades frown, although her eyes are sunny. Her smiles are lightning, though her pride despair, and her disdains are gall, her favours honey. So far, my love is beautiful, and I care greatly about how she feels about things. A modest maid, decked with a blush of honour, whose feet do tread green paths of youth and love, the wonder of all eyes that look upon her, sacred on earth, designed a saint above. So again, she's very beautiful. Chastity and beauty, which were deadly foes, live reconciled friends within her brow. And had she pity to conjoin with those, then who had heard the plaints I utter now? For had she not been fair and thus unkind, my muse had slept, and none had known my mind. Okay, so we have chastity and beauty united. It's interesting that he mentions about how they were deadly foes, because that's almost an allusion to a Madonna complex. But then we get, and she had pity to conjoin with those, which I don't follow. What do they mean she had pity to conjoin with those? Then who had heard the plaints I utter now? Oh, and had she pity, so this is hypothetical. Had she pity to conjoin with those, then who had heard the plaints I utter now? So if she had joined with those, if she had chastity and beauty, then I would have no complaints to act as the inspiration for this poem, which is odd because it says that chastity and beauty live reconciled in her brow. For had she not been fair and thus unkind? Oh, had she pity to conjoin with those? So I wonder if that's... I wonder if they're using pity to mean if she had concerns about joining with those. So if she didn't have those qualities. Pity, a feeling of sympathy at the misfortune or suffering of someone or something. That's what I was. That's the sense which immediately leaps to my mind, but doesn't quite work. Something regrettable. It's a pity you're feeling unwell. So yes, it probably means regret. And had she regretted to conjoin with those, then who had heard the plaints I utter now? For had she not been fair, and thus unkind? So you're suggesting that people that aren't beautiful are unkind? My muse had slept, and none had known my mind. That's probably what he means, but we may go back to that based on what follows. My spotless love hovers with purest wings above the temple of the proudest fame, where blaze those lights fairest of earthly things, which clear out clouded world with brightest flame. So my love is extremely great. My ambitious thoughts, confined in her face, affect no honour but what she can give. My hopes do rest in limits of her grace. I weigh no comfort unless she relieve. I think that is a reiteration of the sentiment that he cares very greatly about how she feels. You know, if she is being... Or it says, my hopes do rest in the limits of her grace. I think that means... I think by grace it's referring to being gracious and it means, you know, if she's being very generous, then that he has high hopes. If she's not, then he has very low hopes regarding this this relationship. Where were we? My fortune's wheels the circle of her eyes. So this is just taking that metaphor further. Whose rolling grace dined once a turn of bliss. Okay, so that's a particularly, well, poetic way of expressing that he's taking a chance on her. All my life's sweet consists in her alone, so much I love the most unloving one. Okay, so I could be wrong. I think this is the first definitive reference to her being specifically unloving towards him. Although, again, it does harken back to the line where it says, "For had she not been fair and thus unkind." But we know she is fair, which would therefore imply she's kind, so perhaps she doesn't love him, but she's gracious towards him? As always, I welcome comments. If you have your own opinions on this, by all means, leave comments and I will read them and we can discuss. Anyway, so moving on. Although I would note the line, "All my life's sweet consists in her alone," is very romantic in sentiment. And yet I cannot reprehend the fight, or blame the attempt presuming so to soar. The mounting venture for a high delight did make the honour of the fall the more. So this is almost a reference to a chivalric way of thinking. Pursuing something noble with putting your heart and soul into some noble quest, and that even failure is honourable. For who gets wealth that puts not from the shore? I don't follow what they mean by puts not from the shore. Danger hath honour, great designs their fame. I think this is just reiterating essentially what I had just said, that there is honour in doing, well, in this case it's emphasising dangerous things, not just noble things. But glory doth follow, courage goes before, and though the event oft answers not the same, suffice that high attempts have never shame. The mean observer, whose base safety keeps, lives without honour, dies without a name, and in eternal darkness ever sleeps. And therefore, Delilah, 'tis to me no blot to have attempted, though attained to thee not. So again, this is just taking this metaphor of loving her, who apparently does not love him back, as almost like a knightly quest, or a brave, manly act. It's an interesting metaphor, to be sure. So, then we have, when men shall find thy flower thy glory pass, and though with careful brow sitting alone. I'm not sure what they mean by careful brow, but still. Have this message from thy glass. Again, I'm not following. What do they mean by from thy glass? Don't know. That tells the truth and says that all is gone. Oh, could it be? No, probably not. I was briefly entertaining the possibility that it could have been a crystal ball type glass. You know, following on from the idea of the noble quest, which could bring to thought ideas of magical beings. Perhaps this is a crystal ball telling them that all is gone, but I may be just being overly fanciful there. Fresh shalt thou see in me the wounds thou madest, though spent thy flame in me the heat remaining. I that have loved thee thus before thou fadest, my faith shall wax when thou art in thy waning. So in other words, once you're no longer beautiful, I won't be so keen on you, and you'll regret not having taken advantage of a relationship with me when the chance was had. Now, when you say it plainly like that, somehow it loses some of its romantic quality, I feel. But I think, although very eloquently put, that's what he's getting at. The world shall find this miracle in me, that fire can burn when all the matter's spent. Then what my faith hath been thyself shalt see, and that thou wast unkind thou mayest repent. I think waste must be an archaic form of was, and that thou was unkind thou mayest repent. Thou mayest repent that thou hast scorned my tears, when winter snows upon thy sable hairs. Okay, this is perhaps a slightly recovering, in that he's emphasising the fact that it's not just that you didn't love me, you were outright unkind, you hurt me. And that's specifically what you're going to repent. So yes, while you're beautiful, I'm pursuing you, you're hurting me. When you're no longer beautiful, if you're essentially, I think what it's getting at, you know, like, I'm not going to stick around if you're still hurting me. And you may regret that, I think is what it's getting at. Beauty, sweet love, is like the morning dew, whose short refresh upon the tender green cheers for a time, but till the sun doth show, and straight is gone as it had never been. That's a nice metaphor, isn't it? To be fair, a lot of the in a lot of the poetry we've read, we see faithful love as being the ideal, and I think that is both true of the culture of the time. This was written in Tudor times, and indeed subsequently all the way up through the Victorian period. So I suppose this isn't actually probably wasn't a very common metaphor, simply because it almost has the exact opposite meaning to the ideal at the time. But I have to admit, the visual of likening love to morning dew is quite creative. Soon doth it fade that makes the fairest flourish, short is the glory of the blushing rose, that hue which thou so carefully doth nourish, yet which at length thou must be forced to lose. Essentially that's just repeating what we've already heard about the fact that beauty fades, although I do find the part where he says carefully doth nourish very interesting. That suggests that she's not just been born beautiful, she is actively maintaining it. Which, I mean, I suppose isn't surprising, but, you know, I suppose you could say that there could be a remark here about how, you know, human nature doesn't change, that things like taking good care of yourself in the sense that a beautician would understand it isn't new. When thou, surcharged with burthen of thy years, shalt bend thy wrinkles homeward to the earth, and that in beauty's least expired appears the date of age, the calends of our death. Again, I think that's repeating the same sentiments we'd already read, although I would say the date of age doesn't fully pass to me. I sort of understand what they're getting at, but I mean, I would think of a date as being a specific point in a year, for example, a particular day. So the date of age, I think, has been a little lost on me. The calends of our death, again, calends I assume is a shortening of calendar, but I could be wrong. Let's see if Wiktionary has that. Oh. Often with initial capital the first day of a month. I did not know that. The calends of our death. Interesting. A day for settling debts and other accounts. By extension, biblical synonym of Rosh Hodesh, the Jewish festival of the new moon. Rare synonym of calendar, an account or record. The first day of something, the beginning. So the calends of our death, so when we die. But no more. This must not be foretold, for women grieve to think that they must be old. So this is almost showing a certain politeness towards her, or a certain consideration towards her. So he's just gone on and on about the fact that you're going to get old and you're going to lose your looks and you're going to die. But let's not talk about that because it might upset you. So then we have, I must not grieve my love, whose eyes would read lines of delight, whereon her youth might smile. Flowers have time before they come to seed, and she is young and now must sport the while. So I think that's saying she's not fully emotionally mature, with the reference to a flower, and I suppose it's dismissing her unkind acts as sport, which is interesting. And sport sweet maid, in season of these years, and learn to gather flowers before they wither, and where the sweetest blossom first appears, yet love and youth conduct thy pleasures thither. So I think this is just extending the metaphor between love, youth, and therefore immaturity, and flowers. Lighten forth smiles to clear the clouded air, and calm the tempest which my sighs do raise. Pity and smiles do best become the fair. Pity and smiles must only yield thee praise. I think that's essentially saying it's not so bad if you smile. You know, your smile makes me very happy. And it's easier to forgive you if you're smiling. And pity would presumably be her pitying him. Make me say, when all my griefs are gone, happy the heart that sighed for such a one. Make me to say, when all my griefs are gone, happy the heart that sighed for such a one. So I think that's saying, when his griefs are gone, so when she finally requites his love, your smile will make me say, it gives me such a happy heart to be in love with such a one, that is you. Let others sing of knights and paladins, in aged accents and untimely words, paint shadows in imaginary lines, which well the reach of their high wit records. So, let others sing about fantasy, but I must sing of thee and those fair eyes, authentic shall my verse in time to come. When yet the unborn shall say, lo, where she lies, whose beauty made him speak, what else was dumb? That else was dumb. Well, dumb, of course, refers to not being able to speak. His beauty made him speak, that else was dumb. Oh, okay, so it's suggesting that I wonder if it's supposed to be taken literally, suggests that this is someone that couldn't speak, but then almost by a miracle her beauty made him able to speak, or more likely that's just a metaphor to say how beautiful she is, or it's possible that it's trying to draw a correspondence between saying things that aren't important or have no merit, unlike the things he says about her beauty, which do have merit, and literally not being able to speak. I mean, certainly there must be a certain etymological link between those two concepts, in so much as the word dumb both gets used to describe people who have the condition of not being able to speak, and those that are lacking in intellectual prowess. So there are possibilities here, and I'm not sure which one is most applicable. These are the arks, the trophies I erect, that fortify thy name against old age, and these thy sacred virtues must protect against the dark and time's consuming rage. So I think it's saying, by speaking of your beauty, I am erecting monuments to it that will survive even in old age. So even when it's past, people will still know about how beautiful you were. And these thy sacred virtues must protect against the dark and time's consuming rage. I think that's essentially saying, but as for your part, you need to protect your virtue, because obviously I can't do that. Though the error of my youth in them appear, suffice they show I lived and loved thee dear. Oh, that's an interesting way of concluding. Though pursuing this unrequited love with you shows myself up it shows me up as being prone to youthful folly, like a what would be the word, I can't think of the proper word. But the idea that having this deep attraction towards someone who doesn't really care for you is a symptom of youth, you know, like a puppy love, I think is possibly what it gets called. Although possibly that's requited. But certainly the idea of youthful love as opposed to older, and thus it is implied more serious love. A childish or youthful infatuation with another person, yes. So although it shows me up as someone that's suffering from puppy love, at least in these writings it shows that I lived and that I loved you. Which I think is a very nice way to sum up this poem, which at various points was perhaps bordering on the dubious. But yes, now that I've fully examined it and thought about it, I think it's rather a nice one. But quite a lot to unpack. Anyway, let's move on to the riddles. Yes. So, I believe 135 was the one that we finished on last week. The riddle part of it is let me try again. The riddle part of it is, I am a bitter but wholesome good, were my virtues better understood, for many things impossible to thought have been by me to full perfection brought. The daring of the soul proceeds from me, with prudence, diligence, activity, sharpness of wit, and fortitude I give, and teach the patient man to better live. When men once strange to me my virtues prove, themselves I make them know, and him above. The flatterer from the friend I teach to know, and in me a fair possession lies. But oh, the childishness of men all me refuse, because I'm plain and gaudy trifles choose. I'm made the scorn of every foppish fool, insulted, hated, turned to ridicule. And I believe the solution to that one was poverty. Indeed it was. Right, where were we? Nope. Weren't that far in. There we go. So the first new riddle of today, and looking at the time, probably the only one I'm afraid, is 136. Near to the purling streams I rest, where I'm often found, oft took up like a wandering beast, and put into the ground. Oh, sorry, put into the pound. Let me start again. Sorry. Near to the purling streams I rest, where I am often found, oft took up like a wandering beast, and put into the pound. Sometimes I high and lofty grow, my head I proudly rear, but seldom in a coach I go, though often in a chair. Yet if my merits rightly weighed, I've no great cause for pride, since I'm not only lightly made, but oft laid aside. When mortals from their cares awhile a strict cessation keep, the tedious minutes I beguile, and watch them while they sleep. As when of old Alcmena's son, by poisoned shirt annoyed, so when my covering is put on, I by it am destroyed. As beast by sacrifice prepared, I am fatted for the fire, and bound and struck, and, when upreared, in flames and smoke expire. I once oppressed relief did bring, my kind assistance gave, and from the fury of a king did Israel's leader save. Very interesting. Okay, so who was Alcmena? Alcmene, mother of Heracles in Greek mythology. Also Alcmena. Alcmena means strong in wrath, was the wife of Amphitryon, by whom she bore two children, Iphicles and Launome. She is best known as the mother of Heracles, whose father was the god Zeus. Alcmene was also referred to as Electryon. A patronymic name as a daughter of Electryon. Electryon? I don't know, sorry. Mythology. According to the Bibliotheca, Alcmene was born to Electryon, the son of Perseus and Andromeda, and king of Tiryns and Mycenae, or Medea, in Argolis. Her mother was Anaxo, daughter of Alcaeus and Astidamia. Other accounts say her mother was Lycidice, the daughter of Pelops and Hippodamia. or Eridice, the daughter of Pelops. According to Pausanias, the poet, Asius made Alcmene the daughter of Amphiaraus and Eriphyle. Hesiod describes Alcmene as the tallest, most beautiful woman with wisdom surpassed by no person born of mortal parents. It is said that her face and dark eyes were as charming as Aphrodite's, and that she honoured her husband like no woman before her. Exiled to Thebes, according to the Bibliotheca, Alcmene went with Amphitryon to Thebes, where he was purified by Creon for accidentally killing Electryon. Alcmene refused to marry Amphitryon until he had avenged the death of her brothers. During Amphitryon's expedition against the Taphians and Teleboans, when Zeus desired to sleep with Alcmene, he made one night last longer, extending it to 3, by ordering Helios, the sun god, not to rise to 3 whole days. He then visited Alcmene, disguised as Amphitryon. This persuaded Alcmene that he was her husband. Thus Zeus slept with Alcmene, his great-granddaughter, thereby conceiving Heracles, while recounting Amphitryon's victories against the Teleboans. When Amphitryon finally returned to Thebes, Alcmene told him that he had come the night before and slept with her. He learned from Tiresias what Zeus had done. In Homer's Iliad, when Alcmene was about to give birth to Heracles, Zeus announced to all the gods that on that day a child by Zeus himself would be born and rule all those around him. Hera, after requesting Zeus to swear an oath to that effect, descended from Olympus to Argos and made the wife of Sthenelus, son of Perseus, give birth to Eurystheus after only 7 months, while at the same time preventing Alcmene from delivering Heracles. This resulted in the fulfillment of Zeus' oath in that it was Eurystheus rather than Heracles. According to Ovid's Metamorphoses, while in labour, Alcmene was having great difficulty giving birth to such a large child. After 7 days and nights of agony, Alcmene stretched out her arms and called upon Lucina, the goddess of childbirth, the Roman equivalent of Aletheia. While Lucina did go to Alcmene, she had been previously instructed by Juno, Hera. Oh, Juno came up in one of the poems today, when the poem which was comparing a man's lover to various Roman gods. So that's the Roman equivalent of Hera. To prevent the delivery, with her hands clasped and legs crossed, Lucina muttered charms, thereby preventing Alcmene from giving birth. Alcmene writhed in pain, cursed the heavens, and came close to death. Garanthis, a maid of Alcmene who was nearby, observed Lucina's behaviour and quickly deduced that it was Juno's doing. To put an end to her mistress's suffering, she announced that Alcmene had safely delivered her child, which surprised Lucina so much that she immediately jumped up and unclenched her hands. As soon as Lucina leapt up, Alcmene was released from her spell and gave birth to Heracles. As punishment for deceiving Lucina, Garanthis was transformed into a weasel. She continued to live with Alcmene. Oh dear. Plautus, in contrast to the depictions of difficult labour above, an alternative version is presented in Amphitryon, a comedic play by Plautus. Here Alcmene calls upon Jupiter, who performs a miracle allowing her to give birth quickly and without pain. After a crash of thunder and light, the baby arrives without anyone's assistance. Death. After the death of Amphitryon, Alcmene married Rhadamanthys, son of Zeus, and lived with him in exile at Ocyale in Boeotia. It is said that after Heracles was apotheosized, I believe that means became a god, Hylas, having pursued and killed Eurystheus, cut off Eurystheus' head and gave it to Alcmene, who gouged out the eyes with weaving pins. In Metamorphoses, an aging Alcmene recounted the story of the birth of Heracles to Iole. There are two accounts of Alcmene's death. In the first, according to the Megarians, Alcmene was walking from Argos to Thebes when she died at Megara. The Heraclidae fell into disagreement about where to take Alcmene's body, with some wishing to take her corpse back to Argos, and others wishing to take it to Thebes to be buried with Amphitryon and Heracles' children by Megara. However, the god in Delphi gave the Heraclidae an oracle that it was better to bury Alcmene in Megara. In the second account given by the Thebans, when Alcmene died, she was turned from human form to a stone. Pausanias indicated that an altar to Alcmene had been built in the Synosarges in Athens, alongside altars to Heracles, Hebe, and Iolaus. Pausanias also said that Alcmene's tomb is located near the Olymparium at Megara. Okay, that was all very interesting. We know who she is now. Not sure how much help that's going to be for solving the riddle, though. As when of old, Alcmene's son, by poisoned shirt annoyed. Let me read it again, actually. Near to the purling streams I rest, where I am often found, oft took up like a wandering beast, and put into the pound. Sometimes I high and lofty grow, my head I proudly rear, but seldom in a coach I go, though often in a chair. Yet if my merits rightly weighed, I've no great cause for pride, since I'm not only lightly made, but often laid aside. When mortals from their cares awhile a strict cessation keep, the tedious minutes I beguile, and watch them while they sleep. As when of old Alcmene's sons, by poisoned shirt annoyed, so when my covering is put on, I by it am destroyed. As beast by sacrifice prepared, I'm fatted for the fire, and bound and stuck, and when upreared, in flames and smoke expire. I once the oppressed relief did bring, my kind assistance gave, and from the fury of a king did Israel's leader save. So Alcmene's son is just a reference to Hercules, and I assume the poisoned shirt is one of the legends about Hercules. I'm not familiar with that one in particular. Near to the purling streams I rest, where I am often found, oft took up like a wandering beast and put into the pound. Now, put into the pound might be a reference to just picking something. Because if you were picking plants by the riverside and you had a basket, I wonder if poetically you might refer to it as putting them in the pound. Does raise a question, what do they mean by pound though? Does it have a specific meaning that isn't obvious? None of those. A place for the detention of stray or wandering animals. See, I'm wondering how old that usage is, given that this would have been written in the very early 1800s. A place for the detention of automobiles that have been illegally parked, abandoned, etc. It wouldn't be that. A section of a canal between two adjacent locks. Well, it wouldn't be that. A kind of fishing net having a large enclosure with a narrow entrance into which fish are directed by wings spreading outward. Unlikely. So it probably is just referring to enclosing something. And it's just using the analogy of a wandering beast that gets enclosed in a pound for what I assume is probably plant life, since they refer to it being fatted for the fire. What else do we have? Sometimes I high and lofty grow. Again, that's unlikely to be an animal. More likely a tree. willow, maybe? Willow grows by rivers, by waterways. My head I proudly rear, but seldom in a coach I go, than often in a chair. Though often in a chair. Ah! I was interpreting this originally as... in the naive sense of something you might put in a coach or something you might put on a chair. But I wonder if this is actually a reference to a specific type of wood. So you wouldn't use this type of wood for a coach, but you might use it for a chair. Yet if my merits rightly weighed, I've no great cause for pride, since I'm not only lightly made, but often laid aside. So presumably it's quite a light wood, which might imply that it's quite a soft wood. When mortals from their cares a while a strict cessation keep, so they cease caring. When mortals from their cares a while a strict cessation keep, or they stop doing the things they care about, the tedious minutes I beguile and watch them while they sleep. So it could just be a reference to sleeping. Their cares a while a strict cessation keep, I mean. But why would a type of wood be watching them? I don't know. As one of old Alcmena's son, by poisoned shirt annoyed, so when my covering is put on, I by it am destroyed. What would be destroyed by its covering? That's another question I don't have an answer to. As beast by sacrifice prepared, I'm fatted for the fire. That would figure with wood. And bound and stuck, and when upreared, in flames and smoke expire. Again, that would make sense. Unless the covering is fire. A once oppressed relief did bring, my kind assistance gave, and from the fury of a king did Israel's leader save. Is there a type of wood in the Old Testament that... well, I suppose it could be the Old or New Testament, strictly speaking. That was known to give exceptional protection to one of the Jewish kings. I must admit, I'm a bit stuck. I can think of the idea that it's some type of wood half fits, but it doesn't fit with all of it. And as for but I don't know many types of wood, and my best guess is willow, simply because that's the only type of wood I know that specifically grows near water. I don't think I'm going to get it if it isn't that. So, if anyone else wants to make a guess, please leave it in chat. And I will look up the solution now. So this was 136, if I recall correctly. While I'd be pleased if I got it right, one has to admit it would be almost entirely by luck. Oh, nearly went too far. But I think I did go too far momentarily. So, I'll give you a few more seconds to make a guess if you want to, and then I'm looking it up. Okie doke. A rush. Oh! That makes sense. As in a reed. And of course, they used to use reeds a lot for... They used to use reeds a lot for lighting. I believe. I think they used to soak reeds in animal fat to create a it's not technically a candle, but it was used like a candle as a form of lighting. I mean, certainly from the medieval period, probably before then, all the way through to just before artificial lighting was common. So I imagine they were probably still using them. Actually, would that be true? It's possible that by Victorian times they'd moved on to more artificial lighting, like, not artificial lighting, more artificial products like candles, but yeah, there is such a thing as that, and of course it was, trying to remember his name. Famously in the story in the Old Testament, when the Jews were enslaved by the pharaohs and they had the plagues, trying to remember his name, brought up in the Egyptian court. Remember his name. One of the most famous figures in the entire Bible. Book of Exodus. Moses. Was it Moses? No, it wasn't Moses, I don't. According to the Book of Exodus, Moses was born in a time when I think it was Moses I was thinking of. Moses was born in a time when his people, the Israelites, an enslaved minority, were increasing in population, and as a result, the Egyptian pharaoh worried that they might ally themselves with Egypt's enemies. Moses' Hebrew mother, I don't know how to pronounce that, Jochebed, secretly hid him when Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys to be killed in order to reduce the population of the Israelites. Though Pharaoh's daughter identified as Queen Bithia in the Midrash, the child was adopted as a foundling from the Nile and grew up with the Egyptian royal family. Yes, it was Moses I was thinking of. And his basket was, I think, stopped by reeds, as in rush. But Moses' mother placed him in an ark and concealed the ark in the bulrushes by the riverbank. Okay, so yes, this makes a lot of sense. I'll quickly go back to the riddle and read it again, making sure it all makes sense. Wait, no, we weren't that far in, were we? There we go. Near to the purling streams I rest, where I am often found, oft took up like a wandering beast and put into the pound. That makes sense, assuming that it's a metaphor for being in the pound. Sometimes I high and lofty grow, my head I proudly rear, but seldom in a coach I go, though often in a chair. Again, that all makes sense. You might use a reed for construction of a chair, but unlikely for a coach. Yet if by merits rightly weighed, I've no great cause for pride, since I'm not only lightly made, but often laid aside. Again, very light material. Not sure what they mean by laid aside, though, unless they literally mean you'll often find it abandoned for some reason. When mortals from their cares awhile a strict cessation keep, the tedious minutes I beguile and watch them while they sleep. No idea what that's about. Perhaps just that they would have some of these candle-like things I've forgotten the name of in the room while they sleep, maybe? As when of old Alcmena's son by poisoned shirt annoyed, so when my covering is put on, I by it am destroyed. I assume that's just a reference to setting fire to it. As beasts by sacrifice prepared, I'm fatted for the fire, literally fatted, fat soaked into them, and bound and stuck, and when upreared, In flames and smoke expire. Yep. I once oppressed relief did bring, my kind assistance gave, and from the fury of a king did Israel's leader save. That's a reference to the story where, by hiding Moses in the bulrushes, that they saved him from execution. So that all figures. I didn't get it though. Anyway, thank you for coming, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I'll be streaming again on Friday, in which I'll be continuing with Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. I'll also be streaming the same on Saturday, since I very much doubt I'll finish the game in one stream, or one more stream. I started it on Monday. Next Monday will also be a video game stream, and then we're back round to Wednesday, which is my normal poetry and riddle stream. So once again, thank you for coming, everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful night. Good night.